Right after I told All Might that I accept his quirk, he nearly jumped for joy, and then I quickly said, wait a minute, I want to give you a gift first. All Might, I can heal your injuries using my nanite suit. It will completely heal and restore your organs in your body to 100%. And then All Might looked surprised and he said, okay, please help me if you can, young Midoriya. And then I said, give me your hand. And then I said, nanites heal All Might. And then my nanites covered All Might, and at first that scared All Might and he screamed in pain a bit, and I said, stay calm All Might, endure the pain if you can. And then my wrist mounted computer said, Operation Heal the Mighty, healing at 50%, and then it said 70% and 80% and 90% and then 100%. And then suddenly All Might screamed and he bulked up again and he stayed in his bulky form. And then I said to All Might, it's done. And then I put my hand on All Might's shoulder and I said, you're healed All Might. And then All Might began to breathe in and out like normal and he said, oh god, I'm hungry, let's go get something to eat. And then I went with All Might to get something to eat and drink, and then All Might said, oh baby, that hit the spot, thanks again kid. And then he said, oh I almost forgot. And then he pulled out one of his hairs and he said, eat this. And then I said okay, and then I ate All Might's hair, and then a green lightning along with other colored lightning flew out of my body a bit. And then I went to a place in my mind where I saw all the previous wielders of One for All, and they all said, Izuku Midoriya, you are worthy to use all our powers and you are the strongest wielder of One for All, you now possess the powers of infinity and total matter control. And then instantly my eyes glowed bright green and my body levitated off the ground as all the powers of One for All entered my body, gifting me with the powers of two new quirks, one with the powers to push One for All to infinity and the other to completely control all matter, gifting me with all the powers of a true god. And then Himiko Toga and All Might shouted, what's going on? And then Himiko Toga asked All Might, has this ever happened before? And then All Might said, no, I don't know what this is. And then I stopped shouting and levitating suddenly, and then I fell to the floor kneeling. And then All Might asked frantically, what happened kid, please talk to me. And then I said, I'm fine, but I saw something All Might, I saw all the previous wielders of One for All and they told me that I am the strongest wielder of One for All. And then All Might got excited and said, kid, that's good news, do you know what that means? And then I asked him, what does it mean? And then All Might said excitedly, you will the one to stop All for One, because you are the strongest vessel for One for All and it all ends with you Deku. And then All for One felt my powers and he screamed, no, that bastard, he found a great successor, one strong enough to stop me in the next generation. He also might even have the powers to take my powers from me, and he reached infinity and he has his own quirk locked inside of One for All and it's called total matter control. He's a god now, damn you All Might. Tomoru Shigaraki is no longer worthy of my quirk, I must find someone else just as strong as All Might's successor, but that will probably take me forever. And then All for One began to feel true despair when he realized that he could probably never defeat me no matter what he does. And then All for One said, it's impossible now and I probably can't beat him. And Dr. Ajinko said, I found a suitable host and vessel for your powers All for One. And then All for One reluctantly said, who? And then Dr. Ajinko said, Katsuki Bakugo is so strong and durable that he could withstand years of punishment, and one of Katsuki Bakugo's friends now walks the criminal path and he calls himself Long Fingers. And then All for One said, show me their pictures. And then Dr. Ajinko brought up Katsuki Bakugo's pictures, and then All for One said, Katsuki Bakugo is a aspiring hero, so that's out of the question for obvious reasons, but bring up the new criminal Long Fingers. And then Dr. Ajinko said, yes my lord. And then Dr. Ajinko said excitedly, he only got involved in criminal activity to help out his parents with money problems, and he's also using that money to buy his way into UA. And then All for One said, very interesting, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to put him in that school too along with that French kid, because we need two informants on the inside, and maybe I can find out who All Might's successor is so I can get to his family and I can bend his will to my side. And then Dr. Ajinko said, but sir, that's risky, because what if doesn't work? And then All for One said, I don't do what if scenarios, I'm only interested in results and what gets the job done, and my plan is genius really, all things considered. They won't suspect him.